Dating is all about the energy, and the energy that you put out into the world is a lot of the energy that you get back.
Katie, let it out with Katie. Let it out with Katie Dalebout, enthusiast and curator of people and ideas you need to hear.
Happy Valentine's Day, everyone! If you are listening to this the day that it's coming out, it is Valentine's Day 2017, also known as my favorite holiday. And if you've been following me for a while, or if you read my blog back in the day when it was called The Wellness Wonderland, you might remember many a Valentine's Day post I would write just about why I loved the holiday, which I don't even really know why I do. But I do, and I've liked it ever since I made mailboxes out of shoe boxes in elementary school, and I don't know if I loved it then as much as I have in recent years, maybe since I was in college, but I love love. I'm a romantic, and if there's any excuse to celebrate that and, you know, the color pink, I'm into it. So in honor of this holiday, I'm doing a very special bonus episode, non-Wednesday episode of the podcast. If you're new to the podcast, hi, welcome. I'm Katie, the host of this Let It Out podcast that you're listening to. Anyway, usually it comes out on Wednesdays, but today is Tuesday, where I'm bringing to you a bonus episode of sorts. A relationship expert / coach, Veronica Grant, is here to talk about relationships and the love that comes with them and the maddening that also comes with them, and dating and just all sorts of things. But most importantly, this question is for you, or this episode is for you, because they're your questions. They're the questions that you asked me to ask her, much like elementary school, when you would try to break up with someone through the game of telephone and somebody telling you to tell them. Anyway, I'm on a tangent. The point is, you guys asked a bunch of questions in the listener Facebook group that I should ask this dating expert, and I asked all of them. So the bulk of this episode is really your questions. I didn't really have to do much of the work at all. So thank you for your help asking those questions on Twitter and in the Facebook group. Join the Facebook group if you're not already, and also follow me on Twitter so I can tell you next time who I'm having a guest. I usually tweet out at me and at the guest who I'm about to interview, and I sometimes ask for questions for that person. So anyway, great place to follow me there. And anyway, this is just a cool episode that I really enjoyed recording. And I want to note that we mostly focus on heterosexual relationships in this, because that's mostly what Veronica's experience is and what she kind of focuses on in her coaching. So, but I think, honestly, the relationship dynamics, I'm pretty sure, translate to all relationships, I think. Anyway, I can't wait for you guys to hear this episode. But first, I have to tell you about something else I'm really excited about, that we have a new sponsor. Can you believe it? How exciting is that? The new sponsor today is Aptiv. Do you guys know about Aptiv? It's really cool, and I'm really excited to tell you about it. And that is because Aptiv is something that I use, something that I love. It's basically the Netflix for fitness classes. I love fitness classes as much as the next guy, but sometimes it's hard when you're traveling or, to get out of the house sometimes, especially now when it's cold. So Aptiv brings the fitness classes to you, and they have these amazing playlists. So it's not like terrible music that you have, from doing a YouTube video with like terrible stock music in the background. It's like really good music, really great trainers. It's just really a cool thing. And that's why I was so excited when they wanted to sponsor the podcast. So for you listening, you can do it for free for 30 days when you use the code LETITOUT at checkout. So again, that's the code LETITOUT at checkout. And you want to go to aptiv.com. That's AAPTIV.com. Of course, the link to that will be in the show notes, but just go to the website and make sure that you use the code LETITOUT at checkout to get that free 30-day trial. You can see if you like it. You can see how much you use it. And just check it out. Like I said, there's 100 plus fitness classes. They've got running, they've got cycling, they've got things you can use on the elliptical, on the treadmill, strength training, yoga, which I love. And if you're into full marathon or half marathon or 5K, 10K training, you can get ready for your race. I don't do that, but you can on Active. That's great. High intensity interval training, also known as HIIT. You can, do all sorts of things on Active. And again, the amazing playlist with the music I'm very into. Customizable workouts for how long you have, how intense you want it to be. It's just really cool. I'm really into it. And, it's great to just try it out while you have this free 30-day trial. So I highly suggest that. Again, make sure you use the code at checkout, let it out, to let them know that I sent you. And again, it's Active.com. I don't know if I spelled it right before, so it's www.aaptiv.com. Give it a Google. The link is in the show notes. Just make sure you use that code. I love you guys, and I think you are awesome. I hope you like this podcast episode that really is for you with Veronica Grant, all of your thoughts and feelings on dating. If you have more thoughts and feelings on dating, let's talk about dating in the podcast Facebook group. And, we can do another episode. I can have another relationship person on. We can talk more about it. I really want to know what you think about it. So, all right, here's the thing. I'm going to play this episode now with Veronica Grant, and then afterward I'm going to come back and talk to you again. It's not that long of an episode, meaning it's a normal-sized episode. It's like an hour and a half, I think, with Veronica, but I'm going to have a really long, which for me is a normal-sized episode. It's about 2.5 hours. It might be closer to 3 hours, this episode that will be coming out on Thursday. It would be out on the normal day Wednesday, but I thought, let's give us all a day to cool off from this dating episode, and then we'll have the full episode come out on Thursday this week. Not a normal thing, just this week we're going to have it come out on Thursday. And I'm going to tell you who that is. It's someone that's very special, very important to me. It's actually a return guest, but the first time she came on the podcast was in early 2013. She was one of my first podcast guests. I'm going to tell you who that is and why they're coming back on the show. And I'm going to give you the emoji for the episode at the end of this episode. So stick around till the end of the episode. Again, the emoji for the episode is a big deal. Big deal. I'll tell you what that means if you're new to the show at the end. So enjoy Veronica, and I'll talk to you in a few. All right. I'm so glad you're here, Veronica. Thank you so much for doing the podcast.
Yeah, I am thrilled to be here. I'm really excited.
Cool. So I really want to get to your work and how you became a dating expert and coach and yoga teacher. But I like to start lately in the present. So
okay.
What have you learned or realized or been pondering lately that you're excited or passionate about right now, like as in today or the past week or month? What's present for you?
That's such a good question to ask me today, because I just wrote the Date Yourself Manifesto, literally today.
What does that mean?
So I am just kind of reigniting some of I've got a lot of more new women in the Date Yourself community. And so I am just wanting to kind of share a little bit about, who I am and what I do in the world. And, the thing is, and what really inspired me to write this manifesto is people or women. I work primarily with women. Dating is the gateway issue. Like someone is Googling something on, dating or how to write a profile or, how to ask a guy out or whatever it is. And they might stumble upon a blog post or a podcast episode of mine. And so that's how they come to me. But really what I'm doing is helping women just lean more into who they are and unapologetically, shamelessly, and showing up as themselves, even when dating kind of feels where it's hard to be authentic because we're swiping and it feels kind of gamified. And so that's really what I'm passionate about, is like, how can we make dating something that feels fun and easy and authentic, even if we are on Tinder and Match or OkCupid or whatever way we're meeting people in this day and age.
Cool. So like I started to mention, you are a yoga teacher and a dating coach, an expert.
Yes.
How did that happen? And what does that actually mean? And what do you do with women?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So I kind of have, honestly, two businesses. Um, and for a long time, I've been wanting to figure out how I can combine them. So part of my business is I'm a private yoga teacher where I live here in Dallas. And I've been teaching yoga for, let's see, it's 2017, no, over 10 years, since 2005. So over 10 years, and I've been doing privates exclusively. And honestly, for a long time, I was just teaching yoga because it was fun. I got free membership to either studios or gyms, and it was just fun for me to do. And I never really thought much more of it. And then this other world, I had my coaching business, and I was originally a health coach. And then I transitioned to dating coaching because a lot of the women that I was working with or that were coming to me, or even if they weren't working with me in an official way, they were just, emailing me, asking me their questions. And a lot of people really wanted to lose weight so that they could A, either feel confident to go out and date again, or B, feel more comfortable having an intimate relationship with their husband because they felt like their husband was skinnier than them. And it just, obviously that blocked a lot of intimacy. So that just kept coming up over and over and over again. And I was working with a business coach at the time, and I was telling her this, and I'd also just kind of mentioned in passing that I was my friend's go-to person for writing their dating profiles. And it kind of started just from a conversation, and she was like, well, why don't you just be like a dating confidence coach from a perspective of self-care and taking care of yourself? That's not so much like the advice that you might see in Cosmo or whatever. So that really became the second part of my business, which up until now have been pretty separate. Like my coaching clients, like they know that I'm a private yoga teacher, and my private yoga clients, they know that I am a dating coach. And I don't even actually think all of them know. Like, it's so separate, it's kind of weird. And I've just been thinking a lot about not just the poses that you do on the mat, because that's like just one limb of yoga, and there's 8 of them, but there's a lot of other things in yoga. And I'm especially thinking of the first 2 limbs, the yamas and the niyamas, which you could say it's like the 10 commandments of yoga, because there's 5 yamas and 5 niyamas. So together there's 10, and they're just basically the ways that you're supposed to live your life, and both how you're supposed to treat yourself and then others in your community, and really in the world. And so lately I've been thinking, man, these yamas and niyamas are honestly really good, not just like dating advice, but life advice. And so I've been wanting to tie them to dating. And it just so happens that next month I'm actually teaching the yoga of dating at the Texas Yoga Conference, which I'm super excited about.
Very cool.
Yeah, so I'm hoping to combine them a little bit more in the future. But even with my, with the coaching clients and just that, and the dating world, I do try to talk about like things like ahimsa, which is nonviolence, and satya, which is truthfulness, and being true to you and being true to others, which is a lot of boundaries, and talk about self-love and self-compassion. So it's already really there in the philosophical standpoint. And it's just I don't know, I'm just having fun with it and exploring where it goes right now.
That's great. So as far as that's kind of how the business was built, but as far as you originally being good at helping and coaching your friends about their dating lives and helping your clients focus on cutting out the middleman of wanting to lose weight and just really getting to the root problem, which was wanting more intimacy and more connection, so focusing on dating and their relationships. Have relationships and connection always been something that you've been good at? And what was your journey to the relationship that you're in now, and how has that been part of your work?
Yeah, so I kind of say the opposite. For me, relationships, they don't always come easily. I struggled in dating for years. For years, I felt like I was the single one of my friends. Like I could maybe attract a guy and have a date or two, but it would never turn into anything. Whereas my friends, some of them couldn't stay single. So, and even now in my own relationship, it's, it's always a work in progress. It's always we're always growing and learning, and I'm learning about myself and about Stevie's, my fiance, and we're learning about how our relationship is and where we want it to be, and what steps we need to get to from A to B. And I actually think that it's because it's not something that necessarily comes naturally to me. It's something that I'm forever going to be a student of. And one of the reasons why I switched over from, and another reason why I switched over from being a health coach to a dating coach is that being a health coach, I was really focused on body image and this idea of, women would say, if I lost the last 5 pounds, then I could have X or whatever. So it really became like this cloak for perfectionism and blocking things out of that we're scared of doing because of, this extra weight, whether it was dating or getting a new job or shopping or whatever it was. And even though that was a struggle for me, I kind of got to a point in my life where it just wasn't something that was actually hard for me. I don't want to say I just got over it, but I just got bored talking about it. I'm like, okay, yeah, this was a part of my life, especially when I was younger and didn't have as much confidence. And now it's just something that I don't struggle with. And so I wasn't really being a good teacher or coach for it because I wasn't really being a good student of it, because I could only read so many books about body image and those kind of things before I was like, okay, like that's fine. Like this is helpful. Whereas a book about relationships and how to have conversations, difficult conversations, how to have intimate conversations and be intimate. Like these things are things, at least for the foreseeable future, I will be a student of forever. And I think this makes me a good teacher because I'm just always learning and growing. And, I think, for a coach, I think you only have to be a few steps ahead of your clients. And that's where I am. I'm just continuing to learn and grow. Now, in terms of how I met Stevie.
Wait, before you tell us that story quickly, what are some of your favorite, tools or books or things that have helped you and that you recommend to your clients a lot? And then I want to hear about your relationship.
Okay, cool. So one of the big things that really worked with me was to get really clear on what I wanted in my relationship. So a lot of times, and I know I did this, I had this perfect man list. And it was really, when I look back, and I didn't have it written down, so I don't know everything that was on it, but I have a pretty good idea of what I was looking for. And it was really it was a lot of things. It was some of my just projecting things that either I didn't have or my insecurities, and I wanted that in, someone else. But it was really just a male version of myself. And I didn't have a lot of self-awareness to know, okay, like what kind of person am I in? Like what would compliment me really well? What would probably not compliment me so well? How do I want to feel in my everyday relationship? Like not talking about like the big trips and the, the grandiose romantic dinners or whatever, but just like day to day, like what do I want my relationship to look like, feel like, and be like. And once I got really clear on that, it pretty much eliminated about 90% of the guys that I had ever dated or could potentially date or match with on, OkCupid, which was the site that I was on. So I know it's not really a book, but just throwing out the perfect man list and getting really clear on what you want your relationship to look and feel like, for me was really life-changing. I'm trying to think of a few books. I mean, there's a bazillion books that I've read. One book that I'm actually currently reading, which has been really, really helpful for me, and even just learning and uncovering some of my own patterns and tendencies, is a book called Attached. I forget what the subtitle is, but it's basically just about different attachment styles that we have, and it explains so much of my dating life, and it's been really helpful just to get another perspective of why I was getting really attached to some people and not attached to other people, and it kind of and it helps me to share like even in my own relationship right now, like where some of our conflicts come from, or where the things where we are struggling or where we are trying to grow from. Like it helped me to see, like I can understand why having this conversation is tough for me because of this attachment style that I have. Mm-hmm. So super interesting. I don't remember the author's names, but there's two of them. I'm definitely recommend that book to to your readers. And then honestly, yoga and having just kind of just a really dedicated morning routine has really, really had a huge impact on my life, because it really just set the tone for the day. And it almost didn't matter specifically what I did, but it always included some sort of either meditation or just writing or journaling or just writing whatever, just some prompt, or just writing about what I wanted the day to look like, or even just writing if I was just like really upset about something, just doing something in the morning to just start the day right, just put me on the right foot. And I've been doing a morning routine for, oh my gosh, like 5 or 6 years now. And and to this day, like if I, oversleep or for whatever reason don't hear my alarm clock and I have to like run out the door, like my whole day, I just feel like I'm chasing the day and everything goes wrong. And that has just been huge, huge for me.
Yeah, I'm all about the morning routines and completely agree. So let's get back to all those tools in the morning routine that you were doing and how that led to you personally getting into a relationship. And was that before meeting your partner, Stevie? That was before you started your work as a coach? You did this for yourself? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah. So tell us how this all went down. So you were struggling with dating, you said.
Yes. Struggling with dating. Dating is, so what I really did is I basically told myself and I told other people that I just was not interested in a relationship. And I probably did this in my mid-20s, when I was 25, 26. And before this, I had just constantly been dating. And honestly, by dating, I mean chasing a guy or a relationship that was definitely not going to go anywhere. And I, like I said earlier, like vulnerability wasn't so easy for me at the time. And admitting to myself or admitting to others that relationships weren't working for me, or dating wasn't working, or I didn't know how to do something, was just really not possible at that point for me emotionally. And so instead of, doing that and working with someone or even reading a book about dating or working with a therapist or a counselor, I just said, you know what, I'm not interested in dating. I'm going to focus on my career right now. And I just want to say, for anyone who does want to do that, like that's totally fine. But the problem with me saying that is that it wasn't true. And I was just pretty much bearing this desire to want to be in a relationship down, and it just, what you resist persists. So it just kept coming up, and it was causing a lot of pain and a lot of shame. Like I used to feel very shameful about being single, and like there was literally something wrong with me, or literally I was not as good or less than a person who could be in a relationship. Even if it was a completely toxic, destructive relationship, that person was still better than me than I was in my mind at the time. So that's what I did. I dove into my career. And at the time I was working in politics in Washington, D.C. And on the side, I was teaching fitness classes and yoga classes. And I got the idea. I was like, I want to do what I love to do, which is teaching fitness and yoga full time. Like, why do I just do what I love to do on nights and weekends? So this was my career move that I was going to make. And I thought a really good way to make this full time was to add coaching, which is where the health coaching came in from. So I did some more advanced trainings in yoga teacher training so that I could teach more workshops and private clients and those types of things. And then also that's when I got my health coach certification. And so between the two of those programs, I worked on that for about, a year and a half or so. And for anyone who's ever done any type of like coaching program or coaching training program or a yoga teacher training program, you know that you're not just learning the skills to be a teacher, to be a coach, you're really learning life skills, and it's really changing your own life. And this is when I began to take down this facade of perfectionism that I had built up around my insecurity, around being single or not feeling good enough. This is when I began to really have my, start my daily routines and really taking care of myself, and cutting out the dieting and the counting calories, because I was doing that off and on for years as well. 'Cause again, thinking, well, if I'm going to be single, I might as well be the perfect body weight. And this is when I began to, learn what it meant to actually be vulnerable. And, some of my friendships that I made, especially with my teacher training, because that was live and in person, like some of those are some of the, best friendships I've had. And I think it's just because it really created this space for me to be vulnerable, which really helped me to see who I really was and what I really wanted. And that's when I started to get clarity on like, okay, I don't care if the guy has the same career path as me, or if he looks like this, or if he has those interests. Like what just matters is just someone to start to share this life that I was creating together. And once I kind of had that moment, I was dating at this point, and I hadn't met Stevie yet. But dating it was so weird. Like all of a sudden it just felt easy, where before I would used to just talk to all my friends and we would just like, gripe on about the guys we were meeting or dating or whatever. I would still go on these dates, and sometimes the guy wouldn't be anything interesting, and I'm like, okay, cool, like it was really nice to meet you, but I wouldn't make it mean anything, which before it was. And before my emotion du jour was basically based on, the status of, or my status with some guy was that I was dating. And that just stopped. Like I hit a little bit more of, I don't know if equilibrium is the right word, but it just wasn't the highs and lows anymore that it had been before. And I met some really great guys, like even online. And I know people gripe about online, but I was having great dates and I was going on multiple dates with great guys, and I hadn't met the right one yet. And then I was at a bar in Washington, D.C., and my friend had invited me to this happy hour, and Stevie was there. And it's funny because I literally remember the second I set eyes on him, and I was thinking, this guy is cute, but there's no way. Like I was still, a little nervous about throwing away my perfect man list, and I was like, there's no way this guy would actually, nothing would come of this. And so I guess because I had that mindset, I don't really know, but we just started talking, and I just felt completely cool and confident. And to this day, he'll say that one of his favorite things, or one thing that attracted him to me, was just how I had this confidence, but not like arrogance. And I was just really into the life that I was building and the things that I was creating around me. Because at this point I was building up my yoga business and my coaching business. And that was just, really attractive to him. And it was also the first time, I have this memory. We were sitting on this bench in the bar, and Stevie put his hand on my knee, and he said, "Oh my gosh, how do you get your skin so soft?" And without skipping a beat, I looked right at him and I just said, "Kale." And it was really funny, and like he kind of thought I was a little crazy, probably. I don't know. Actually, I know he definitely thought I was crazy, but it was just a moment for me because it made me realize like how interconnected everything was, like how like the food that I ate literally changed how my skin looked, and how I treated myself literally would affect how I showed up for other people, including the people that I wanted to be in a romantic relationship with. And that's when that was like the point of no return. Growth is always about 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But like that moment for me was really pivotal. Sorry. Mm-hmm. Just because it just made me realize like how interconnected everything is. And I can't compartmentalize, just work on one thing in my life and just put everything else in the back burner, because it all interconnects and all goes together. Now, we didn't start dating that night. We started dating about 6 weeks after that. He was dating someone else, and I was, on all these OkCupid dates. But yeah, that's how we met, and that's how things started, how they got started with us.
Oh, that's great. And now you're engaged.
We are engaged. Yes. I'm super excited.
That's so
Thank
exciting.
You. Yeah.
So you're in this great relationship. You're bopping along. Do you ever feel pressure in your life for this relationship to be awesome because of your business centering around dating and relationships?
Yes. So this was definitely more of a struggle probably about a year ago. And because that was really when I was right after the transition from being a little more than a year ago, I guess, from a health coach to a dating coach, because then I started to put all this pressure on myself, like, oh my gosh, like, what if we fight? Or what if we have a bad day? Or what if we're going through a rough spot? Or what if we break up? Like, what does this mean for my business? And it's interesting because I definitely would put more pressure on the relationship to be perfect, or to be however I thought perfect or ideal should have been. But, of course, the irony there is that it definitely did create tension and issues within the relationship. And then I just got really clear on what it meant to have a successful relationship. And, a successful relationship has, I'm not even sure how you define a successful relationship, to be honest, but a breakup definitely does not make a relationship a failure. Sometimes relationships just have expiration dates, and that just gave me a lot of peace of mind and stopped putting so much freaking pressure for our relationship to be a certain way, or to look a certain way. And then in terms of the fighting, or, I'm not saying like we fight all the time, but, whenever we go through struggles or issues or arguments, it's definitely a little bit of a learning experience for me, because sometimes Stevie will actually say, like, I don't want to be your laboratory. And so, it's not really fair for me to like kind of put him in a place where I'm like, quote unquote, testing something. It, really has to be something that we're both agreeing to, in terms of like, working on the relationship, or agreeing to work on ourselves, or doing some sort of shared goal or project together, as relationship growth. And I think one of the best things that I've actually started to do is to kind of just share, like, that Stevie and I aren't perfect, and that, we didn't have a fight last night, but I'm just saying, like, I would, mention a newsletter when Stevie and I were having an argument, or when something wasn't going really well. Obviously, I would, get consent from him, and I don't really talk about anything that's currently ongoing, but once something is completed and we've moved on from it, then it's definitely a great learning tool for for my audience. And I also just came to the realization that people don't want to learn from someone who seems like a robot. They want to learn from someone who seems like them, like, you have ups and downs. Some days are good, some days aren't good. And the point is that you keep going. You might feel scared, or you might feel, other emotions that you don't really want to feel. But the work is to, kind of work with those emotions, see what the root is, and just keep moving forward. And, that's really what I've committed myself to doing, both in this relationship and in this business. And, if ever, I hope Stevie and I, don't break up or anything, but if we do, like, our relationship was definitely not a failure, and it doesn't make me a bad dating coach or a bad relationship coach. And in fact, it probably in the long run will even, something like that could even give me, more to teach from. And then the same thing kind of goes, like, assuming that we continue to date over the years, learning to be with someone, not just for a few years, but really over a lifetime, is a whole other can of worms that, like, I'm just getting into, right? And so that either way, it's going to be a learning experience, and something that I can, share with my audience and with my business.
Cool. How does he feel about your work and what you do, and how he's involved in that? Was that a conversation you guys had at the beginning?
Yes and no. He's pretty comfortable. So he's pretty comfortable with me sharing about our relationship, as long as it's from my perspective, and I'm not trying to say something from, what his perspective would be. So as long as it's the way I see a situation, and I'm not, then he's okay with it. And another agreement we have is that, he doesn't have an online platform, he doesn't have an online business, so it's really just more one way. But like, I never, I'm always raising him up. Like, even if I'm talking about an argument, or even if I'm talking about something that's more negative, I never will diminish him or push him or like lower him, because that's just, to me, like, there's very few deal breakers in this world, but I think when you're not raising each other up, I think to me that's like probably the number one deal breaker. Now, the only thing that he won't do is he will not come onto a podcast or a webinar with me. A lot of people want to meet him. A lot of people want to hear us like kind of talk about our relationship together, but he won't do that. He says that's your space, that's your thing. Have fun. But he's an engineer, every stereotype of an engineer. So he's very quiet. And he doesn't want to have that kind of presence.
Cool, understandable. And sometimes that dynamic works really well.
Yeah, definitely.
So I have so many questions for you from the Facebook group. So let's just start to move through them since I know you have a hard stop. So, all right, okay. This question is a really good one. How to date when you hate dating, or should I just not date?
That's a really good question. So, all right, so there's like so many things I want to ask this person, but I'm just going to kind of generalize based on what I think that they're coming from.
Okay.
Or where they're coming from. So the first thing is that it's kind of a bottomless pit, this mindset, right? Because if you hate dating, so dating is all about the energy, and the energy that you put out into the world is a lot of the energy that you get back. So, if you think about it, like as someone who's dating, do you want to go on a date with someone who hates dating? Right? Like that person, what is that person going to be like? I mean, they might be like a really cool, great person, but on that particular date, they might just not be very present or authentic, or they might be feeling like, okay, I hate dating. Let's just get this over with. Like, would we be a good match? And that kind of turns into like a job interview type of thing. So, I think in that perspective, it's really helpful, at least first, to change the mindset. And if dating isn't fun, then how can you make dating fun? So if you don't like online dating, it's totally fine you don't have to online date. Like there's lots of other ways to date. You can meet people through meetup groups or through, other activities that you're doing. You can ask your friends to set you up, ask coworkers to set you up. But, I wouldn't say really the answer there is it's not really something that she's doing right or wrong. She's not really going to solve that issue by just doing something different. And that's really just like a mindset thing, kind of like it's an inside job. You've got to change the mindset around that. Otherwise, you're not going to be very fun to date. And if you're not very fun to date, you're not going to be attracting the type of people that I think you want to be attracting.
How do you really change that mindset? Is that self-care?
I think it's a lot of self-care. I think it's also a lot of, I'm all about taking dating breaks, and not just taking dating breaks to Netflix and chill or to do whatever, but to really kind of get clear on who you are and what you want in a relationship, and really what you want your life to look like with that relationship. Because a lot of times, especially, a lot of women who are very success oriented or have like big career goals. I think a deep-rooted fear that we don't really talk about a lot is this fear of losing independence, and I think that goes along with not being vulnerable. I think they're kind of the same type of thing. So just taking some time off from dating, honestly, and doing some self-care, doing some journaling, doing some reflection on what your what your goals are in a relationship, like what do you want, like I said, in your relationship, and how do you want that to like fit into your overall lifestyle. But then also to get clear on, well, what are some of your fears around dating, and what are some of your fears around being in a relationship? Does it mean you'll lose your independence? Does it mean sometimes you'll go on bad dates? Does it mean sometimes you might get rejected? Does it mean sometimes that he won't call you back? Or whatever your fears are, whether it's dating or relationships, and kind of confronting those and thinking, okay, like if this happens, then it's not the end of the world. Mm-hmm. If this happens, then I can use this tool, or I can do this to help combat if that happens in the real world. And I think just taking this full inventory of your dating and relationship life will then in turn help you have a more open and expansive mind when it comes to getting back out and dating again after your dating break.
Cool. Really good answer. Okay, so this question comes from Sasha, who is my friend, and this was something that I was dealing with a couple months ago too, which is how many chances do you give someone when you don't have an instant feeling for them? Like, does it...
Oh my God. I'm so glad you wrote or asked this, because I literally just wrote an email for my newsletter, and I'm going to send it out in a couple of weeks.
Perfect. Okay, tell us all about it.
Okay, so there's good and bad news. The bad news is that I wish I could say, oh, you have to go on 2.5 dates and you have to ask these questions and you have to have these like, obviously, that doesn't work. So here's the thing, like, we hear all these stories. Some people had instant connections with the person they married, and sometimes it happened with over time, and it happened. It started with more friendship, and then like it grew on, and so then a lot of times then people think, oh, well, maybe we have to be friends first. And so then they go on a bazillion dates, and before they know it, they're kind of dating someone that they're not really interested in, or there's like a lot of fear or regret from potentially turning down someone that could have been, quote unquote, the one. So I think this comes from, a lot of it comes from so knowing that you can't, ever know for sure or have a certain number of dates. I think that what really helps is to think of, again, the mindset that you are in when you are making this decision of whether or not you want to see this person again. And I think the mindset that I'm specifically referring to is a lot of times there's a scarcity mindset involved. Like, oh, well, he has all the things on paper that I like about him, but I don't know. I don't really feel it. But on paper, I feel like I should like him. So that's kind of a scarcity mindset. Well, he likes me, and like I think I could like him, so maybe I should just learn to like him, or see if I can like him, because I don't know when I'm going to be able, when someone else will like me ever again. And so again, like that's another form of the scarcity mindset. So, scarcity mindset, to combat that, you have to really embrace this abundance mindset where, you can turn a guy down if you're not interested in him. And that's totally fine. And if you're not sure about a guy, it's also fine to go on a date with him, or a second date, or even a third date. But I really believe that once you do start going on that second or third date, you will get a gut feeling, and your job then is to listen to it. So I had a similar experience. I went on this date, and the first date was great. Like, I thought he was cute, and I don't know if there was like a spark, but like I was definitely interested. And so we agreed to go on a second date, and I was really excited about the second date. And then the second I got there to the second date, I just had this gut feeling of like, oh, this isn't it. Like, I'm not interested in this anymore. And I kind of muscled through the second date, and I didn't get the nerve to tell him at the end of the date that I wasn't interested, or even the time between second and third date. So I went on yet another date with him. And I just like kept telling myself, like, well, this guy's like everything that I wanted. Like, he's so nice, and he's definitely into me. And but like I just had this feeling I was just not into it. I was not into it. But I was just kind of grinning and bearing it. And then we were halfway through our date. We were actually walking around the DC, the National Mall in DC. And he asked if we could meet up later and cook dinner together. And that's when I was just like, nope. And I actually told him right then and there, and left in the middle of the date, that I was really sorry. But, I just wasn't feeling it. And I, left, and I walked to the metro and went back home. And it was kind of crazy. It was a little surreal, because this was really the first guy in a long time that I had dated that, seemed to check off all the boxes, seemed to be really interested in me. And so my, old former self, and I kind of even, muscled it through a little bit in date number 2. But my former self would have been like, well, I should really like him because he's really great. Mm-hmm. But then I just had to let that go and trust myself that I was not interested in him. And, that I had to trust that there's someone else. And I forget, I think we went on a date in March or so, and I met Stevie in April or May. Yeah. So, yeah. You
have to make space for something new. And I think when that space is occupied by something that's not so great, it blocks something great from coming. And I've experienced that too.
I talk a lot about that, both like in your calendar and then also emotionally. Like in your calendar, like I tell to have a date night scheduled, and like that's your night that you And it doesn't have to be like every Tuesday night. Like you can switch things around depending on like when the Pilates class is or when your friends are getting together. But just having a free night every week to have a date, I think really makes a difference in your mindset, but also like logistically, so you can actually have time to go on a date with someone. And if you don't have a date that week, or if you're not actively dating, then that's a great time to have a date with yourself, and really do some reflection and some journaling and meditation and whatever you want to do, yoga, cooking yourself a nice meal. And then the same thing goes, I talk a lot about emotional bandwidth and creating and making sure that, well, our emotional bandwidth is very finite. Like we don't have a lot of space for relationships and dating, in that when you assume that we also have things like our career and friends and family and just making sure all the bills get paid and the dog gets fed, all those things. So the leftover emotional bandwidth that you have is really, really small. And if it's taken up by guys that you're only halfway interested in, or guys that don't treat you well, but for some reason you're still, sometimes good reasons that you're still not good, but like explainable reasons that you're still with them, or exes or any of that kind of stuff, that really takes up like literally emotional space for someone new.
Yeah, really good. Okay, so there's a bunch of questions about exes, and I'm just going to kind of boil them into a couple, and you can just begin them. So Morgan asks, can you be friends with your ex, and how to handle exes in general? And Shayla says, how to know if you should get back together with an ex, if that's the right choice or not. And then the other question here is how to handle your feelings about the conversation with a current person that you're dating about their exes. So I don't know which one you want to start with, but just shoot on those.
Okay, I'll start going, and then if I forget a question, just remind me and I'll answer.
I'm on it.
Okay, so I'll start with, can you be friends with an ex? I think, in the long term, if you wanted to be, you could, especially if that person was going to be in your life somehow, like if you have a lot of mutual friends or if you work together or something like that. But I think especially right after a breakup, you need that clean swipe. Not having that clean swipe really, like I talked about, that emotional bandwidth, really, it's really hard to get them out of your headspace, even if you're seeing them on your newsfeed, or if like literally their phone number is still in your phone and you see it when you scroll through to find, someone else's phone number. So I really think that you have to clear all of that out. You have to get rid of their anything they gave you that's in your house, anything that reminds you of them. I think you should, if not unfriend them, at least unfollow their feed or whatever, so you don't see them, or statuses, so you don't see them in your news feed. Unfollow on Instagram, all that kind of stuff. And this can be definitely temporary, but I'll just say something about that in a second. It can be temporary. So if the relationship was less than a year, I'd really recommend at least giving yourself 6 months of space to really allow yourself to grow beyond that relationship and that person. And if you dated for longer than a year, then I really think you need a year to really, not necessarily just to heal, but just to, I think you can date other people, but I think you really do need to get them out of your space for that full year. Now, just a quick caveat: if someone has kids with an ex, obviously, like, you can't totally push them out of your life. And so in that case, I think having your logistics, especially with pickup and drop off of kids, as cleared up as possible from the beginning, so you can really just communicate by text or email about like when you're picking up, whoever from soccer, or when they're getting dropped off or whatever, just so that there's as little potential for any kind of emotional contact or relationship to happen. I really think that this is so important, and it's so hard because a lot of times when women resist and don't want to do this is because there's often a hope that they'll get back together, or that the guy will have a change of feelings or heart or whatever. And this is all just clogging up your emotional bandwidth and not really allowing you to move on and allow someone who who does want to be with you to be in that emotional space. And in terms of I think it might sound really harsh. I know it sounds harsh to say that you can't be friends with an ex, but I have a hard time seeing when and where there's really a place for an ex. in your life. Relationships, I believe every single relationship that we have, literally, if it was a one-night stand or if it was like a 5-year relationship or 10, 15, whatever your relationship, every relationship that comes into our life came into it for a reason. And I really believe that every single person in some way was a soulmate, because I think it really has the potential, if you're open to it, to teaching you a soul lesson. Like every single relationship, again, a one-night stand or a 15-year marriage can really teach you profound lessons about yourself and who you are and the type of relationship that you want to be in. And when that relationship comes to an end, usually that means it's time for that relationship. Like you learned, or at least you had the opportunity to learn a lesson. Whether or not you take in the lesson really is up to, up to you and to the work you're willing to do. But regardless, that relationship's reason for being in your life is over. It's done. And so in terms of getting back together with an ex, I certainly know it happens. And, but I think generally, relationships ended for a reason. So I think if you're considering getting back with an ex, you really have to look into reasons like, well, why did it end? And a lot of times it ended because I'm not going to guess. There's all sorts of reasons why a relationship ended. But usually I think it's best to trust that relationship ended for a reason. I mean, it's hard to kind of say a blanket statement because I don't really know what the situation is with the woman who asked that. But especially if it's part of a pattern, or if it's like a situation where you have a hard time leaving, or you feel like you need this person in order to feel X, like you need that person to feel confident or whole or complete, like all of those, that's not love. That's just, something filling a void. And we think it's love, but it's not. And if that's the type of relationship that we're talking about, like, definitely, I would say almost 100% those relationships have no business continuing on. Sometimes it's a timing thing. Sometimes, there's something that hard that happened in one person or one of the parties' lives in the relationship, and it made the relationship difficult. But even then, I would question, if something hard goes on in my life, like I know that I want Stevie there by my side. And, if I push him away during that time, I would think that says something about what I really feel about the relationship. So I guess that's just a really long way for me to say I have a hard time seeing, where like when a relationship could potentially, get restarted again without knowing the specific details. And I think there was other questions that I probably missed.
The other one was, what about hearing about old relationships of a current partner that you're with, and if that makes you squirmy, and how to handle feelings around that in those conversations?
Yeah, so I think if an old relationship from your partner makes you squirmy, I think that means there's something in you that it's triggering. So that's on you. That's not on your partner. And there's probably some feeling of lack of confidence, maybe lack of trust, or confident in how you are in the relationship, lack of confidence in how he feels about you. And again, that has nothing to do with him. He can be madly in love with you, but if there's jealousy or confidence is eroding because of some past relationship, that's you, and that's your work, and that's something for you to work on yourself, and has nothing to do with him. If he's like flaunting it or saying things like comparing you to his ex, that's a different story. That's definitely a discussion around boundaries, and would definitely be one of those kind of conversations, at least in my mind, that would be like, if he's doing something like that, potentially a deal breaker, because, what happened in Stevie's past relationships has nothing to do with me. It's none of my business. Like it's between him and, the God, universe, his exes, whatever. He learned the lessons that he needed to learn from them, and he brought them to our relationship. And it's the same thing with mine. Like I've had a lot of relationships, and they have nothing to do with Stevie. They have all made me the person I am today, and I'm grateful for every single relationship. And I can say that now. I couldn't have said that a few years ago because some things would have been a little painful still. I feel really confident in all the relationships I had, and it doesn't trigger me at all to hear about Stevie's exes, and same vice versa.
Cool. Great answer. Okay, next question. This is from Sarah. She says, I would love to hear her talk about how important it is to have things in common. I wonder if the guy I'm dating needs to have the same interests and hobbies as me, or sharing similar values and having a good connection is enough, or is one more important?
Ooh, that's a really good question. So I personally think that values are way more important than common interests. So here's the thing, like hobbies in our lives, sometimes hobbies stay with us for 20 plus years, sometimes they come and go. And the same thing is true for your partner. So hobbies and interests, I mean, I think it's important to have some things that you can do together, but a lot of those things you can kind of grow into learning together. So an example, I was not an avid hiker or outdoors person when I met Stevie, but both of us together have become really into hiking, and we bought some like hiking equipment together and camping equipment together. And it's just been something that we've developed both in the relationship. I'm a yoga teacher. I do yoga every day. Stevie does not go to yoga. We have a deal that he comes to yoga with me once a year, and that's on the Valentine's Day couples workshop. And that's pretty much our deal. And it's totally fine. Like he has some other things that he's interested in. Like he's really into basketball and woodworking and pottery. And let's see, what else does he do? He watches movies that I will never watch, like action movies and Walking Dead and all that kind of stuff. Like never am going to watch that. We both have common interest in cooking, which is definitely, that was probably like the biggest shared hobby that we came into the relationship with. But what I think is most important is just making sure that, like, imagine that you are walking down a path and your partner should be walking on a path, but it doesn't have to be the same path, but it needs to be parallel paths and they're going towards the same place. Mm-hmm. So that really alludes to this idea of values. And just a quick anecdote. So one thing that I really wanted when I was younger was I wanted someone who was a globetrotter, because I was a globetrotter for a while. I lived abroad and all over the Middle East. And that's what I thought I wanted. And I kept attracting these types of guys who were doing exactly that. But literally we were traveling, and so literally we were crisscrossing and zigzagging by each other. And so nothing ever turned into anything. And one of the reasons why I thought, oh, nothing would happen with Stevie is because even at the time, like I was like, oh, well, he's not a globetrotter. I mean, he's traveled, but he's not like I've traveled. And what I was really going after there, when I got really clear and honest with it, was I was really going for someone who had this adventurous spirit, because I thrive on having adventurous spark and spirit. And to me, like I equated being adventurous with traveling. And it's not the same. I mean, it can be the same thing. Certainly traveling can make you feel adventurous. And if you feel adventurous, traveling is a great thing to do. But Stevie loves to do a lot of other things that I wouldn't before have categorized as adventurous. And even though they might not be my favorite things to do, we can share that same feeling of adventure together. So, for example, one of Stevie's favorite things to do is to go to like the Asian supermarket or there's a Korean supermarket, and there's another Indian supermarket here in Dallas, and he will get like, I don't know, some crazy stuff, like some weird mushrooms or spices or fruit or vegetable that I never even seen before, and he'll come home and like Google it, see what it is, and then make a recipe with it. And I love that, and it's not something I particularly enjoy to do, but I love A, eating the food because it usually is pretty good, and B, I just love the adventurous spirit that's behind it, because I can really, really relate to that. And so when you're looking for a partner, I would look for, the spirit behind an interest or a hobby and see if that is shared. And then, of course, definitely the values, and just looking that you're on the same, not the same, but parallel paths together.
I love that parallel path thing. That is so good. Okay, the next question comes from Laura, and she says, does web/app-driven introductions or person-to-person introductions, what is the difference there? What are the pros and cons? And do they have any long-term impact on the relationship? How you met?
Okay, so she's asking, I just want to make sure I understand. So if they meet online, like on a web, like a dating site or an app, like
exactly. How does that affect the relationship long-term between that and person-to-person interactions?
Okay.
And just any pros and cons on the two.
Yeah. So I don't know any statistics. I do know that, this is another book that for the tools question, Modern Romance by Aziz Ansari. Highly recommend
that.
Yeah, it's such a good book. It's not really dating advice, but it just helps to kind of see the whole dating picture. So I don't know any specific statistics on the longevity of a relationship or the quality of the relationship based on, how people met. I do know that within the past 10 years, the percentage of people that have gotten married that met off of line has been growing like at a pretty quick rate. Which I think is really interesting. I don't think that there is anything that will, so basically, I don't think there's anything that will change that, relationship. However, I do think that we tend to be more biased when we meet people online, and we're biased towards people, or we're biased towards arbitrary things. So kind of like what I was just talking about with the spirit behind a hobby or an interest that you have or the value that you have. A lot of that stuff gets lost when you meet people online, whether it's, a swipe app or a more traditional dating site. And so I definitely think there's pros and cons to both meeting people online and offline. I think by far the biggest con for meeting people online is that, like, another funny story is when I was online dating. So I went to UNC, the University of North Carolina. I'm a huge diehard Tar Heel basketball fan, and our arch enemy is Duke basketball. And this guy has great profile, like such a cool guy, interesting stuff. And he mentioned something about Duke basketball, and I was like, oh, I am not messaging him. No freaking way. And I really didn't. And it was so silly. And even I knew consciously that it was so ridiculous that I wasn't going to message this guy because he was a fan of Duke basketball. And I don't know, maybe I missed out on a really great opportunity, but no regrets now. But it was so silly and arbitrary of me. Whereas had I met him out, like in quote unquote real life, and maybe 3 dates in learned that he was a Duke basketball fan, maybe it would have just been like, a flirty part of the relationship. And, I know that's kind of a trivial example, but like, again, sometimes like dating sites and places will just match you, and even you consciously match people based on your interests, and that can be really arbitrary. So, I think that's definitely the biggest con to meeting online. A big pro to meeting online is sometimes people want that security of kind of knowing a little bit about the person before you go on a date with them, or knowing, being sure, at least on their profile, that they're interested in a long-term relationship, and that's definitely a pro that you get. But, I don't think there's anything that would make you more or less likely to succeed or fail, whether you meet someone online or in person.
Cool. Great. So, okay, this question comes from Jessica, and she asks, how do you meet people when you aren't a bar hopper / nervous to date after being out of the game for so long, wanting a real relationship, but just not knowing where to start when you don't like going out?
Okay, so I don't like going out either.
Me
I'm such a homebody, and if I do go out, I like to go out with a small group of friends, and like we literally just hang out with ourselves.
Yes.
Or like their friends. So it's never like so I totally can relate to that. Honestly, I think online dating is great. I know I just kind of talked about a con of online dating, but it's a really great tool to meet people if you use it in the right way. And that really is, in quote unquote, the right way, is that meeting people online, it's really a way to be introduced to people and not a way to date people. And so, a lot of times people meet online and they've been texting with this guy for weeks. I'm like, oh my God, like, shit or get off the pot. Sorry, I hope I can curse on podcasts. And so that's really when online becomes just icky and weird and gross and like, what am I doing here? So I think online dating is a great
introduction service.
As an introduction service. Telling people that you're interested in meeting someone. Of course, I never did this when I was single because I guess towards the end I kind of did, or I was pretty obvious about it, but because that can be a little vulnerable. But telling people you're interested, if they have any friends, to set you up. And then meetup groups obviously are a great way to meet people. And it's not that you have to find someone in a meetup group with your same interests, but at least it gives you like a conversation starter. But I also think that it's a state of mind. And I've talked a lot about the mindset, which is why I call myself a dating mindset coach, because it's really a lot about the mindset. And, I got this question from one of my clients in my group program. And I said to her, I was like, men are everywhere you are. And it's really a state of mind. And, if you're at a coffee shop standing in line at Starbucks, like there are men there. If you are, I don't know, even out with your friends, like I know you don't like to go bar hop, but like if, any type of social setting out of your home, like there are men there. You're your friends know people. Yoga classes, there are men there, or gyms, there are men there. And I guess I'm assuming that she's attracted to a man. So sorry for the assumption. But I think that so the state of mind is really just about being open, and just being open and ready for any possible serendipitous moment to happen, because it totally can. Like, it totally happened with Stevie. Like, I just happened to be chatting with a friend. I was like, I don't have any plans tonight, and I was like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm going to this happy hour thing. I'm like, okay, cool. He was like, they have like $2 drinks there. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like, that was literally my motivation for going. And then, I met Stevie. And it's not that, I met him in a bar, which is kind of funny. Not that you have to, again, go out to bars and meet, but just wherever you are, men are. And so, are you open? Like, what's your body language look like? Are you just staring at your phone when you're in line at the grocery store? Are you even giving someone the opportunity to say hi or to make eye contact? Or can you do that? Can you make eye contact with someone? Can you say hello to someone? Can you, initiate a conversation, when you're out somewhere, standing in Starbucks line, or, wherever.
Yeah. I think that just openness is so crucial and important. I know for me, I used to like constantly have my headphones in and looking like, please do not talk to me at coffee shops. And a friend gave me the advice of like, smile a little bit and, like crack a smile and look someone in the eye. So I think that's great. Asking for the internet password is a great way to talk to people. And then doing things that you love. Like, I went to see my mentor, Elizabeth Gilbert, there, and then met the person that I'm dating now there because I wanted to see this person that I really love. So doing things that are really fun for you, and you'll meet people there potentially.
Exactly. But you can do all those things, and if you don't have an open mind, then it doesn't. It doesn't. It's like it doesn't do anything.
Yeah, exactly. So you mentioned same-sex couples. Do you work with people who are same-sex couples, and are there many differences within the mindset of dating when it comes to same-sex couples?
So I don't personally, or I haven't yet worked with someone from same-sex couples, but a lot of it is really all of the same, because a lot of it is still about being authentic to you and leaning into who you are, and confidence and self-love and self-acceptance, and that doesn't change based on who you love.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you so much, Veronica, for doing the podcast, and I know you have a podcast, and let people know how they can find you, and anything else that you want to let out on the Let It Out show. Anything that you want to share about dating, maybe like your greatest lesson about being in a relationship boiled down to a sentence?
My goodness. Okay.
It's a huge question.
So let's see. My greatest lesson. So when I first started reading books about relationships, oh my gosh, okay, this is not a sentence, but relationships are spiritual growth. Like, they're opportunities for spiritual growth. And it took me a long time to realize what that meant. And I feel like I'm finally at a point where I really understand that relationships show you all the parts of you that you love, and the parts of you that you wish were different or better, or the parts of you, opportunities for growth, as you could say on job improvement forms. And so they're just opportunities for growth. Like, they're never going to be easy and feel like Disney or romantic comedies, and it doesn't mean they should be crappy, but it just means that it's definitely an art and a science and a dance to really live your life with someone else and negotiate all of the things that are, even just one person is so complicated. Getting two people to mesh together is very complicated, and it's a growth. It's a learning project. It's never stop learning. And so if people want to hear more about what I do, you can find me over on my podcast, Date Yourself Radio, and I actually do a weekly Q&A. So if you have more questions you want me to answer, you can go to veronicagrant.com/ask and then submit that there, and I will answer your question on a Monday show. And you can find me at veronicagrant.com, and there I have 37 ways to date yourself. So especially if you're on a dating break or really just wanting to build your confidence, self-love, you can dive into that. And then I'm not exactly sure when this is going to get aired, but around Valentine's Day, I have the Date Yourself Challenge, which is my super popular challenge that it's a whole community of thousands of women that are all dating themselves and striving to be authentic and confident, and either they're, wanting to be in a relationship or in the relationship that they are in.
I love it so much. Thank you so much for doing the
Awesome.
podcast and being my friend. And I was on your podcast, which was lovely. And we talked about journaling and dating, so people can go listen to that. And thank you for being here.
Yeah, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for having me. It was a real pleasure.
All right, you guys, I hope you learned something from Veronica. I learned a bunch. I thought that was a pretty cool conversation. And again, let me know your thoughts and feelings on dating. Do you want to have more dating-centric episodes? I, think that it would be fun. Let me know what you think. Okay, before I tell you who's coming up on the show next week, I just want to, or not next week, just this coming Thursday, if you're listening to this the day it comes out. Listen, before I tell you that, I have to tell you, again, about Aptive. We love Aptive already. It's a new sponsor of the podcast. They're so cool. They're like the Netflix for fitness classes. You can do elliptical training. You can train for a 5K. You can do yoga. You can do whatever you want on Aptive. And they have good music, which is amazing. If you want to try it, you can do so for free. Why not? What's holding you back? You don't even have to leave your house. And you can exercise. Endorphins make you feel amazing. So, how do you try it? You just go to aptive.com and enter the code Let It Out at checkout. That's Let It Out at checkout, which is very important because that lets them know that I sent you and you're trying it because you heard about it through this podcast and it supports the podcast, which I'm sure you probably want to do. You've been listening to me rambling at this point at the end. Anyway, all right. As promised, who's coming up on the show on Thursday? It is Bex. Rebecca Barucki from Beck's Life. She has a book coming out, but we don't talk all about. It's not like a promotional thing for her book. I don't even know why I said that. We talk for 3 hours about everything. It is a fascinating episode. You learn about her family history and some crazy stuff, and she's just one of my favorite people in the world. I met her in an elevator 3 years ago in New York City, and we've been friends on the internet and in person ever since. She's been a great supporter of mine. She was at my book launch in New York, and I think I cried when I saw her because I just love this woman so much. Anyway, we talk about motherhood. I actually haven't re-listened to the episode yet. I'm about to do that right now. But you guys are great. I love you. Happy Valentine's Day. The emoji for this episode to let me know that you listened all the way to the end of my ramblings right now. The emoji is the heart because it's Valentine's Day. And my favorite of the hearts, you can send me whatever color you want, I guess. But my favorite is the red one. I really like the simple red heart. And especially since it's Valentine's Day, I think that would be great. If you really are into the purple one, if you like the green one, that's fine. The black one is becoming really popular now. I'm not super into it, but again, if that's what you want to tweet at me, if that's what you want to tweet at Veronica to let us know that you listened to the end of the podcast, I'll accept that. That's completely fine. Again, my favorite is the red one, so feel free to use that one. But any color of the heart emojis will be fine for this episode. Happy Valentine's Day. I love you guys. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. I can't wait to talk to you again on Thursday with Bex from Beck's Life. She's amazing. It was such a fun podcast episode to record with her again, and I'm excited to actually go listen to it myself right now, and I'm sure I'll learn a lot. So talk to you guys on the internet, and have a great Valentine's Day. I hope it's romantic and beautiful, and there's lots of self-care, and there's lots of love and chocolate and hearts. Again, tweet at me the hearts, Instagram me the hearts. I'm at Katie Dalebout everywhere if you want to be friends on social media. I would love that. I'm going to go make some tea. Talk to you guys later.